Sean Strickland is the current undisputed UFC middleweight champion, and he is sitting pretty at the number 7 spot in the UFC's pound-for-pound rankings. But he's also become notorious for constantly generating mad controversy on social media due to his hot takes on social issues and his own mental struggles. How exactly did Sean become the man he is today? Where does his dark thoughts of killing people come from?
Like, I would love to cut somebody open.
When you learn about the rough life he's been through,
And I went through some shit growing up, man.
everything starts making perfect sense. So without further ado, here are 10 facts that'll tell you everything you need to know about Sean's disturbing life. Number 10. He had an extremely abusive childhood. Growing up in Corona, California, Strickland had to deal with an alcoholic father who beat him on the daily. The fighter has talked about it at great length in interviews, adding that his dad eventually became addicted to pills.
My father, abusive alcoholic, drank, got into pills later on.
He doesn't exactly specify what pills he got hooked on, but whatever they were, they only made the beatings worse. On one occasion, Sean's dad violently attacked his mother, forcing Strickland to intervene and hitting him with a guitar in the head. He ran away from home after the incident and called the cops on his dad.
So my dad gets on top of my mom and he starts strangling her, right? And he's like, I'm gonna kill you tonight. So me being a little kid, I get up. I'm like, one thing I see is the guitar. Smack it over his head, grab the phone, call the cops, run down the hill.
But the next day, his mom posted bail and got the guy out of jail. Needless to say, Strickland hated his father, and he doesn't hesitate to mention it when asked.
Everything about him I hated.
Yes.
Everything about him I hated.
He found some solace in his grandfather, but that came with its own set of consequences. Number 9. His grandfather turned him into a neo-Nazi. When Sean was a teenager, he only had his granddad to rely on. Small problem though. The guy was a neo-Nazi, and he instilled some pretty racist views in the kid. Things got even worse when he watched American History X. It's a movie starring Edward Norton, and let me just say, you're not supposed to sympathize with the main character. Even so, Sean saw a lot of himself on the film, and it encouraged him to continue believing in white supremacy.
You ever seen American History X? That's who I wanted to be, was one of those guys. Like dirty, white trash, and respect,
Things started getting out of hand pretty quickly as his racist views began to interrupt his school life. Number 8. He got kicked out of school for a shocking reason. Honestly, if you fill an impressionable young teenager's head with all kinds of violent rhetoric, it's only a matter of time before he starts practicing what you preach. That's exactly what happened with Sean in the 9th grade. Now, no one knows what he did exactly, but one thing's for sure, he got kicked out for committing a hate crime. I think we can all put 2 and 2 together. A neo-Nazi kid attending a school that probably has kids of all races is a recipe for disaster. Also, Sean had some pretty violent tendencies growing up. He probably learned it from his dad, and as a result, the young Strickland was a bit of a ticking time bomb. At just 14 or 15 years old, he was out of school. And when you factor in his racist beliefs, it seemed like he was on the worst possible path. Luckily, his mom was around to help him out. Number 7. He started taking MMA classes and turned his life around. When Sean's mom learned that he'd been expelled for a hate crime, she knew that things were getting serious. She decided to take him to an MMA gym, which obviously helped him find an outlet for his destructive energy. It also forced him to work with people of all ethnicities. At the gym, your race doesn't really matter. All that matters is your skill set. And he could clearly see that white people weren't any better or worse than black, Latino, or Asian people. Everyone was the same. And when dudes from different races started to help him learn the ropes, he realized just how dumb his ideology was.
A lot of things too, like a lot of people who helped me out in my life, they weren't white. Like a lot of ethnic people were the ones that kind of held their hand out. And next thing you know, the people that are helping you out, they're not even white. So it's also another shameful thing that you have to come to terms with. My entire life I hated you just because you're colored.
In a way, MMA saved Sean from what would have been an absolutely terrible life. He and his mom moved out when he turned 17, which is when Sean made his professional MMA debut. Number 6. He was the undefeated King of the Cage middleweight champion. He made his professional debut in 2008, with the King of the Cage becoming the first promotion he called home. Over the next few years, Sean showed a brutal level of prowess that saw him become the middleweight champion on December 8, 2012. He'd come into the championship bout with a 9-win streak and went up against Josh Bryant for the title. It eventually came down to a split decision, but Sean was declared the winner, and he went on to defend the title 3 more times in 2 years. He ended his King of the Cage tenure as the undisputed champ, which set him up for bigger and better things. Number 5. He made his UFC debut in 2014. By this point, Sean was a hot item in the MMA world. The UFC had sitting up and taken notice of the young fighter, and he eventually got a contract with his debut bout set for March 15, 2014 in the welterweight division. Facing off with Bubba McDaniel, Tarzan came in all guns blazing and absolutely crushed his competition. The bout ended in the very first round when Strickland took Bubba to the canvas and finished him with a rear naked choke. The first time Strickland fought in the UFC turned out to be a monumental moment in his career, and he ended up proving himself beyond all shadow of a doubt. It really seemed like he'd overcome his unfortunate childhood, but sadly, disaster was waiting just around the corner. Number 4. In 2018, he was involved in a near-fatal accident. By December of 2018, Strickland had fought in the UFC 10 times and won 7 of these bouts. He really had nowhere to go but up, with just hardly anyone in the league able to go toe-to-toe with him. Just when his career was hitting its stride, he nearly lost his life. You see, Strickland is a big fan of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Not long before New Year's 2019, he was riding his bike along an LA road when a car appeared out of nowhere and crashed into him. The accident left him unconscious and with serious injuries, and Sean had to get a knee surgery done before he could leave the hospital.
Still missing my quadricep.
What's wrong with your quadricep? You don't have a quad?
Yeah, no, there's a little indent right there. See how it like dips in?
Oh, whoa.
This left him unable to fight for 2 whole years, and that must have been unbearable for someone that loves being in the octagon as much as Sean. Regardless, he made a comeback in 2020, this time in the middleweight division, by defeating Jack Marshman via unanimous decision. This fight took place in an empty UFC Apex Center, which allowed us to enjoy Sean's hilarious trash talk during the fight.
I knew I'd like you. Bro, you just can't fall. Why would you fall? Come on, Jack! Come on, Jack!
Strickland has managed to show his ability to survive against all odds, but even so, his childhood haunts him to this day. Number 3. His childhood has left him with PTSD. An abusive father, an enabler mother, and a neo-Nazi grandfather is about the worst parental combination you can think of. Due to the enormous abuse he faced, Strickland is facing a lifelong battle with PTSD. Every so often, the trauma rears its ugly head. Like, remember the time when Dreykus Duplessis made a comment about his dad? That's just what PTSD can do to you. And it's not the only thing he's facing because of the condition. Number 2. He has thoughts of killing people. As a kid, he'd walk down the street with a knife, hoping to run into someone he could kill. In his own words, if Sean wasn't in the UFC, he'd be in jail for seriously hurting someone.
I mean, I wanted to kill someone so bad as a kid. I'd walk around with a knife just hoping I'd don't want to kill somebody.
And that's mostly because of the PTSD. Trauma can leave deep scars and long-term issues with emotional regulation. It's a good thing that Sean can vent his impulses in the octagon, cause he's gone on the record to say that he has sadistic thoughts every single day. Honestly, I feel for the guy. PTSD is no joke, and he deserves some compassion and sympathy for what he's gone through. That said, he doesn't usually show compassion for other fighters going through a hard time. Number 1. Despite his struggles, he ridiculed Khalil Roundtree for speaking up about his mental health. The Warhorse has been pretty open about his depression and suicidal thoughts. He laid it all out in a heartfelt speech following his KO win over Carl Robertson.
Man, I don't want to wait until I'm a champion to be able to tell my story on where I come from, being a 300-pound kid on the brink of suicide, but burdened by depression, not knowing what to do in my life.
But Sean really didn't like this supposed display of weakness. He went on an absolutely insane rant on social media, calling him a PC beta male, all for sharing his childhood struggles. You'd expect Sean to sympathize with someone like Khalil, especially given his own bouts of bad mental health. But I guess his hard life has left him devoid of any empathy. In the end, Sean didn't even have the decency to admit he was wrong, preferring to double down instead. But hey, it looks like karma punished Strickland for those actions. He recently appeared on Theo Von's podcast and he did the exact same thing. He broke down and cried in front of millions of people when talking about his own mental health struggles. Hopefully, he learns a lesson from this and becomes a better person. Which of these disturbing facts about Sean's life shocked you the most? Leave a comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe. But only do so if you enjoy the content. But that's all for today. See you next time. Till then, remember to protect yourself at all times.